Hello friends, welcome to Buried Truths, where the dust of time is swept away and history's deepest secrets rise to the surface. Let's view the video. Edward Snowden was born on June 21, 1983 in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and raised in a patriotic family. His father worked for the U.S. Coast Guard, and his mother was employed at a federal court. Snowden grew up with a deep respect for government service, believing in the Constitution and American ideals. From an early age, Snowden was fascinated by computers. He taught himself programming and networking, excelling beyond his peers. After fights, dropping out of high school due to illness, he later earned his GED and studied computing. His skills led him to pursue a career in the tech world, particularly in cybersecurity. He joined the U.S. Army in 2004, attempting to qualify for the Special Forces, motivated by a desire to serve his country. However, an injury led to an early discharge. Snowden soon transitioned to civilian work within the intelligence community, leveraging his IT expertise to gain entry into the CIA. By 2006, Snowden was working as a systems engineer for the CIA, stationed in Geneva. His role granted him access to sensitive intelligence data. During this time, he began noticing questionable practices and covert surveillance operations that disturbed him. Seeds of doubt about the government's integrity started to form. Snowden moved on to a job with Dell and later Booz Allen Hamilton, both of which contracted with the NSA. These roles gave him access to an even deeper level of classified material. What he saw shocked him: mass surveillance on American citizens without their knowledge or consent. Feeling increasingly disillusioned, Snowden concluded that internal reform wasn't possible. He began secretly collecting documents as evidence of illegal and unethical surveillance practices. He believed the public had a right to know what was being done in their name and without their permission. In 2013, after years of internal conflict, Edward Snowden made the decision that would define his life. He would leak classified NSA files to journalists. It was a choice that would cost him his country, his freedom, and his safety. But he believed it was a moral duty. The world was about to change. After joining Dell as a contractor for the NSA, Edward Snowden quickly advanced due to his exceptional technical abilities. He was granted high-level security clearance and became responsible for managing classified systems. His work took him to various NSA facilities, including the massive surveillance center in Hawaii, where his access deepened. Snowden's role allowed him to observe how surveillance tools were deployed not just against foreign threats, but on a vast scale targeting ordinary Americans. The distinction between national security and mass data collection began to blur. He became alarmed at the volume and invasiveness of what he saw behind the curtain. He discovered programs that could tap into phone records, emails, browser histories, and even live chats. These tools operated with minimal oversight, often authorized by secret court rulings under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. The scale of the surveillance extended far beyond what the public had been told. In Hawaii, Snowden worked as an infrastructure analyst. This position gave him access to a trove of data systems and program details. He began to see patterns: automated keyword flagging, bulk metadata gathering, and surveillance of international leaders. The NSA had essentially built an all-seeing digital eye. One key program he encountered was PRISM, which allowed the NSA direct access to data from tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Apple. Combined with XKeyscore, which could track nearly any online activity, these tools represented a level of surveillance that Snowden believed violated fundamental human rights. He also noticed that many of his colleagues either didn't question the system or felt powerless to challenge it. The NSA operated in a closed-loop culture where secrecy bred compliance. This atmosphere added to Snowden's sense of urgency and ethical responsibility. By 2012, Snowden had begun downloading and cataloging documents, creating a record of what he considered systemic abuse of power. He was methodical, aware that a single misstep could mean prison, or worse. What he was about to reveal would shock the world and forever change the conversation on privacy. In May 2013, Edward Snowden quietly flew from Hawaii to Hong Kong, carrying a cache of thousands of classified NSA documents. He had contacted journalists Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras in advance, carefully vetting them for integrity and reach. They agreed to meet and document his revelations. Inside a Hong Kong hotel room, Snowden met with the journalists and began laying out the extent of the NSA's surveillance operations. He provided irrefutable proof that the U.S. government was spying not only on foreign entities but also on its own citizens at an unprecedented scale, without transparency or consent. The first bombshell report dropped on June 5, 2013, via the ERD Guardian. It exposed a secret court order that required Verizon to hand over phone records of millions of Americans to the NSA daily. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. People felt blindsided and betrayed. The next leaks revealed the PRISM program, shocking readers worldwide. The NSA had direct access to user data from major tech companies. It was no longer paranoia. It was proven fact. Snowden's documents made it undeniable that mass surveillance was real, intentional, and far-reaching. International allies were also outraged. Snowden revealed that the NSA had spied on German Chancellor Angela Merkel and intercepted communications from embassies and foreign officials. Trust between the U.S. and its partners was severely shaken. The leaks caused diplomatic tension on a global scale. The American government quickly identified Snowden as the source and launched a full-scale manhunt. Media outlets worldwide picked up the story, turning Snowden into a polarizing figure, a hero to some, a traitor to others. Meanwhile, more documents continued to surface, each one more damning than the last. As the leaks dominated headlines, Snowden disappeared from public view. He was on the run, but the information he had released was beyond his control. The truth was out. The public was now asking difficult questions about privacy, government power, and the price of security. Among the most alarming revelations from Snowden's leak were the details of PRISM and XKeyscore, two powerful tools at the heart of the NSA's surveillance empire. These programs didn't just collect metadata. They gave analysts the power to access nearly anything done on the internet in real time. PRISM allowed the NSA to gather data directly from the servers of tech giants like Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook. Emails, video calls, chat messages, file transfers, everything passed through American servers and was open to collection. This wasn't occasional. It was systematic and embedded into digital infrastructure. XKeyscore, on the other hand, acted like a search engine for global internet activity. Analysts could query specific keywords, email addresses, or metadata fields and instantly retrieve information. Snowden described it as being able to wiretap the world. No court approval was required to perform searches. These programs were supposed to target foreign threats. But in practice, they cast a massive dragnet that ensnared millions of ordinary people, including U.S. citizens. From journalists and activists to private citizens, almost anyone using the internet could be watched, often without ever knowing. Snowden released internal training slides used by the NSA that revealed just how easy it was for analysts to use these tools. They operated with minimal oversight, and the definition of foreign intelligence was interpreted so broadly that it became a catch-all for nearly any information. The public was horrified. Privacy advocates sounded the alarm, arguing that the government had quietly built the most expansive surveillance network in human history. Snowden had shown that this was not theoretical. It was happening now, with devastating implications for civil liberties. For Snowden, PRISM and XKeyscore were the breaking point. These tools represented the unchecked power of a system that operated in secrecy. Exposing them was not just about technology. It was about defending the fundamental right to privacy in a digital age increasingly ruled by invisible watchers. The U.S. government reacted with swift and overwhelming force to Edward Snowden's leaks. Within days of the first revelations, the Department of Justice charged him under the Espionage Act of 1917. He faced 3 felony counts, including theft. of government property, and unauthorized communication of national defense information. President Obama and senior intelligence officials condemned Snowden's actions, claiming the leaks endangered national security and put American lives at risk. The narrative from Washington was clear. Snowden was not a whistleblower, but a criminal and traitor who had aided America's enemies by exposing classified operations. As media coverage intensified, efforts to capture Snowden ramped up. Intelligence agencies coordinated with international partners to track him down. Meanwhile, Snowden fled Hong Kong with the help of activists and flew to Moscow, hoping to reach a country that would grant him asylum. His passport was revoked mid-flight. Trapped in the Moscow airport's transit zone without valid travel documents, Snowden spent over a month in legal limbo. While global media camped outside, he applied for asylum to over 20 countries. Most declined, fearing backlash from the US. Eventually, Russia granted him temporary asylum on humanitarian grounds. The American government exerted diplomatic pressure on allies, warning them against aiding Snowden. A stark example occurred when Bolivia's presidential plane was forced to land in Austria due to suspicions that Snowden was on board. It was an unprecedented move, highlighting the scale of U.S. influence and desperation. Inside the U.S., lawmakers debated the implications of the leaks. Some demanded reforms and praised Snowden's courage, while others insisted on prosecution. Intelligence agencies launched internal damage assessments and began tightening controls, aiming to prevent future breaches from insiders with access to classified data. Despite the pressure, Snowden remained firm. He publicly stated he had no intention of hiding forever and took full responsibility for his actions. His goal, he said, was not to destroy the NSA but to inform the public. The government's reaction only reinforced his belief in the need for transparency. Edward Snowden's revelations didn't just shake the U.S., they reverberated around the globe. Governments, corporations, activists, and ordinary citizens all reacted in waves. For many, it was the first concrete proof that digital privacy was an illusion and that surveillance was embedded into everyday life. World leaders reacted with outrage. Germany, Brazil, France, and Mexico demanded explanations after learning that their officials had been targeted by the NSA. The most dramatic response came from German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who learned her phone had been tapped. She famously told President Obama, "Spying on friends is not acceptable." Diplomatic relations between the U.S. and several allies grew tense. Summits were disrupted, and international trust in American intelligence cooperation was severely damaged. The leaks showed the extent to which even allied nations were treated as potential threats under the U.S. surveillance doctrine. Activist groups, especially digital rights organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Privacy International, seized the moment. They launched campaigns advocating for surveillance reform, data encryption, and greater government transparency. Snowden became a symbol for a growing global movement demanding digital privacy and internet freedom. Major tech companies, exposed as unwilling or unwitting participants in government spying, began pushing back. Google, Apple, Microsoft, and others ramped up their use of encryption and public transparency reports, attempting to restore public trust. The tech world started to recognize its role in protecting user rights. Public opinion was split. In countries with high trust in government, support for Snowden was lukewarm. But in many others, particularly among younger, tech-savvy populations, he was seen as a digital age dissident, a person who risked everything to expose the truth. Snowden's actions forced a reckoning. Governments reconsidered surveillance policies, the public began encrypting their data, and a worldwide debate over security versus liberty took hold. It was no longer just an American issue. It was a global conversation about power, control, and the future of privacy. Edward Snowden's legacy remains one of the most fiercely debated in modern history. To some, he is a courageous whistleblower who sacrificed his future to expose unconstitutional actions. To others, he is a traitor who endangered national security, and undermined international intelligence operations by leaking classified documents. Snowden's supporters argue that his disclosures sparked necessary reforms. In the U.S., public outcry led to the USA Freedom Act of 2015, which curtailed the bulk collection of phone records by the NSA. It was a direct response to what Snowden revealed, proof that his actions created real, lasting impact. Human rights groups and legal scholars have defended Snowden, calling for presidential pardon and asylum. They see him as part of a proud tradition of civil disobedience, like Daniel Ellsberg with the Pentagon Papers. His case has become a touchstone for debates about transparency, accountability, and the limits of government power. However, intelligence officials maintain that Snowden's leaks caused lasting harm. They argue adversaries changed tactics, rendering some surveillance tools ineffective. The full scope of the damage remains classified, but leaders in the intelligence community continue to label him a criminal who should face trial. Snowden, now living in exile in Russia, remains active. He speaks through interviews, video conferences, and his memoir, Permanent Record, advocating for privacy rights and ethical whistleblowing. In 2022, he was granted Russian citizenship, further complicating public perception and geopolitical narratives around his story. Public opinion remains divided. Polls show that views on Snowden often depend on age, political belief, and views on government power. Some see him as a modern-day Paul Revere, others as a naive idealist who weakened his own nation. His story continues to stir powerful emotions. What cannot be denied is that Snowden permanently changed how the world thinks about surveillance and privacy. His legacy is not confined to one country or one label. He forced a global reckoning and became a symbol. Controversial, complex, but undeniably influential in shaping the digital age. If you're passionate about uncovering the forgotten stories of our past, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying the journey so far. And stay tuned because there's so much more history waiting to be unearthed right here on Buried Truths.